In this video, we will talk about the Civil Labeler tool inside of OpenRoads Designer. Now, while there's many different options inside of the Civil Labeler tool that you can do, for this video, we're just going to give you a general overview of how the tool works, and then you can apply those to other drawings that are with a set of projects, like, let's say, your profile sheets, or your cross-section sheets, or your plane sheets, like what we're going to do here. So to get to the Civil Labeler tool, if you go to OpenRoads Modeling, and that's the best workflow to open up this tool, we'll go to that workflow, and in your ribbon here, we're going to change this to Drawing Production, and then here's your Civil Labeler tool. And then once you click on it, you'll notice that it brings up the labels, and eventually it'll say Civil Labels. This is where you would go in here and expand that out. And you're going to see the different folders that you can pull from. So if you're doing cross-section labels, of course you can expand that out and you see some cross-section labels that you can do if you're in a cross-section file. Same thing for profile. You have some profile labels that you can place inside there. Now, most of the time whenever you're labeling stuff for like your cross-sections or your profile sheets, and probably some stuff in your plane sheets also, a lot of that stuff is already automated for you to where it places most of the labels that you want for, let's say, cross-sections where you have the slopes and your side slopes and certain labels that go with it. Most of that stuff is already preset and done for you. But this is where you can go in there and possibly add other labels that may be a special case that you need a label somewhere else, and it is actually tied to that element. So let me go ahead and truncate those down and kind of show you an example of this. I will go to Plain Linear to kind of show you how this tool works. So let's say I want to go ahead and label this line. So if I go to Linear, Bearing, and Length, it brings up that particular label with all the settings for it. Most of the time you won't have to mess with these settings. They are already preset to what they should be, but if you need to, you could go in here and change this if you need to make a certain label for whatever reason. But we're going to leave it set to the defaults for this example here. So if I'm ready to place it, all I need to do is come in here and hit the place label option. And then down below here, you simply just follow the prompts that are in your message center right here. So you identify the geometry that you want to label. Let's say I want to label this line. And now I just go out here and place the label of where I want it. And you'll notice right now where it says annotation plan, line direction, and then annotation plan, line length. Basically, it's looking at that element for that label to be placed. So it's basically going to be dynamic to whatever that element is. So now I determine where I want to place it at. So if I want to place it right along that line, I may just come down below here and use this near snap and just snap it somewhere along this line. And then I place it, and you'll notice that that label is now placed. And this label is dynamic. So if I come in here and use my element selection tool and I modify this line, the label should go with it, which it does. That's kind of a nice feature with that. Plus, these labels should automatically update because it knows the length of that line and what angle it's placed on. And that's the power with the Civil Labeler, is because it knows what the length is or what the bearing is or whatever attribute it is. It's automatically going to update with those settings, and you're going to see that here later on whenever we talk about like maybe placing a station offset for your right-of-way lines. So that's one example of it. Another example here, we got name with leader. So if I select that, of course some of your stuff is going to change for your settings for it, but let's say we want to label, let's say, your center line. If I come on here and hit place, it'll say identify the geometry, identify where you want to place the label at, and I'll just use the near snap for this example here again. And I will snap to somewhere here. Go out here and you'll notice that it's placing that label accordingly. So if I drop it off, now it's finished. So it placed that label. Most of these labels with a leader attached to it, if I modify this element, the label will stay where it's at and the leader will go up and down with it. So just to kind of show you that, so if I come in here and I modify this alignment for whatever reason, you'll notice that it modified it, but the label stays intact where it's at. That's the way it's set up by default. Like I said, those settings could be changed to where the whole label will shift with it. Just kind of depends on how you want that label to adhere to that element. Let me go ahead and do an undo to bring that back. So that's a couple examples with the linear. Here's a nice little option that you can also do inside of here. Let's say we want to label the intersection of this alignment and this alignment right here. I can do that using the Civil Labeler tool. And if I look here, there's an option that says Intersecting Geometry. I got 3 of them. We'll just use this one as the example here. Intersecting Geometry with name. So whatever you name that alignment, it's going to use that name that you applied to it and put it with the label. So all I got to simply do now is hit Place Label. Then down below here, it's going to say Identify First Intersecting Geometry. So whichever one I select first is going to be the top of the label. So if I want this one to be at the top and this one to be at the bottom, that's the way the label is going to be placed. So I will do that for this example. So I will go ahead and select this one, and then I will go ahead and select this one for my second intersecting geometry. And now you'll notice on the end of your cursor that you got the label being placed. It's going to be a lot of words right now until you've actually dropped it off, and then it will go ahead and reset to what that station is and also the name of that alignment. So if I go out here and I drop it off, you'll see that that label is placed. Now, one thing that you may encounter with the tool is if I pull it over on this side here, you'll notice that wherever I place the end of your cursor, that's where the actual label is going to be dropped off at. So if I go over here and try to place it right now, if the wording does not go far enough to where it's past this intersection, it's going to look like this, which is probably something that you don't want. But if you go a little bit farther and I drop it off, you'll notice that the label is all placed on this side. So just something to kind of keep in mind whenever you're placing the label. The good thing about it though is once it's placed, you can always move that label. So if I come in here and I select this portion of the label and I move it around, I can do that very simply, and it's still tagged to that element. And like I said, the good thing about that is if for some reason I modify this geometry or this alignment, these stationings are going to change also. So if I come in here and I change this alignment, maybe slightly, you'll see that the stationing has changed for both of those alignments accordingly. That's kind of a real powerful tool with the Civil Labeler tool. Let me go ahead and change that back. So those are a few examples for the Civil Labeler tool using the linear method. I'll show you a few more examples using the points. Inside of here you got different options for maybe possibly labeling a point. I think you can also use these for a linear element. You can do that also with these, but these are more driven for placing a label for a point that's out there. Maybe like a certain cell or a right-of-way marker or for a power pole that you may have out there. Now these tools right here inside the Civil Labeler tool, they work with MicroStation geometry and they also work with the civil tools inside of ORD. So if you place a point out there, there's options that you can place a point and it places a cell like this power pole or this right-of-way marker. This tool right here works better using that civil geometry tools versus the MicroStation tools. They work with both, but it's a little bit more dynamic if you use some of the civil tools inside of there. So just something to kind of keep in mind. But going back to the examples here, if I come in and let's say I want to label this power pole here. I want to know the northing and easting of it. All I need to do is select that label, hit place, and it places that label accordingly. Or if I want to know the coordinates of it and place that label, just change it to that, hit place, and it places that label out there. Or if I want to know the station offset, let's say I got the station offset right here. If I hit station offset, I will go ahead and hit place. Now it's going to give me another prompt and this is what you got to pay attention to, is look at your prompts down below here. It's going to say identify baseline geometry. So on this one here, let's say I want the station offset to be based off this alignment. So I will select this one. Now it's going to say identify the point. Well, let's say I want to identify this point right here. Even though it's not a cell or a point that's out there, I can still do the endpoint of this line. That is an option. So if I go out there and I place that, there's my station offset. Same thing for that one right there. If I go ahead and modify this, you'll see that my station and offset will also update. So that's pretty handy with that. If something does get modified, the stationing will update also. So let me go ahead and do a few undos. Before I do that, I do want to show this. There's going to be a little white circle around the points whenever you place a label, which you'll see right here. And you see one right here, which is actually tied to this one right here. And this right here. And those are on right now because we have constructions turned on in our view attributes. So if I turn off constructions, you will see that those little points go away. Now, just to make you aware of that though, if I turn that back on, just remember constructions will not normally print out unless you tell it to otherwise. Most of the time we're going to go ahead and leave those on because this identifies where that label is being tagged at. This label basically knows the intelligence of it from that little circle right there. So for whatever you do, either leave constructions on and you see the white circle, or if you don't like to see that white circle, just simply come in here and turn off constructions. And then that white circle, the display of it, is turned off. For me, I'm going to go ahead and leave it on because I know it won't print out. The one thing you do not want to do though is to delete that little circle. This is what will happen if you delete that circle. If I come in here and say, I don't want to delete, I don't like that circle, I'm going to delete it. Well, then your station basically doesn't know what it is anymore. It's just MicroStation geometry now. And there's no intelligence to it. So that's the one thing that you don't want to do is delete that little white circle. Keep that in mind. Another example here, which is probably more of a common situation, is let's say I want to label my right-of-way through here. So we have a few different right-of-way options. I will go ahead and do right-of-way new. We'll say this is new right-of-way. And you have two different options, one for the left side and one for the right side. And that's just so it places the label in the right spot. So if I go ahead and do left side, which is this over here, and I will go ahead and hit place label. Of course, you have to identify your baseline geometry, which would be my center line. And then now I will go through here and I will identify the points that I want to label. And I'll just use the endpoint of this line right here. And I will place that one. And I will place that one. And I could go down through the alignment and place those accordingly. Okay, that's one way you can do it. And like I said, those are all dynamic. So if I modify, let's say this was a line string right here, and I modify this, you'll see that the label will go with it. And the point will go with it also because whenever I place that point, I have it tagged to that line. All those will update accordingly. Another way I can do it is by doing a selection set. You do have the ability to do that also. So let me go ahead and delete out that one there. I will delete out this one here. And I will delete that label. And I'm going to delete the points with it also, those little white circles, because that label is no longer out there anyway. That'd be the only time you delete out those little white circles. Alright, so let's say I want to go through here and label all of these in one shot. Well, the first thing that I would need to do is to come in here. Let's go ahead and do the actual point. So I will select these points here. Use my element selection tool. Make sure it's highlighted. Select that one. That one. that one, and this one. Do the place label. I'll identify my center line as my baseline geometry. And now it's going to say accept point. Well, I already have them selected, so I should just be able to go out in the blank area here and accept that. And now you'll notice that it's going to go ahead and place that label. And I would just go ahead and place it somewhere on this side. And since it's all doing them at the same time, all the labels will be exactly the same. So I would just get somewhat close to what you want, like what I'm doing here. As long as I have my label far enough to the left side to where it can fit all that text in, it'll put everything the way it should be. Of course, this is on the right side of the alignment. So I will go ahead and accept that. And you'll notice that it placed all those labels accordingly. And I'll go ahead and hit F4. And I can come in here and I can move these labels to where I need to place them, around some geometry or somewhere else. I can simply do that, and I would have no issues with that. So those are some of the options inside of the Civil Labeler tool that you can do. Like I said, I wasn't going to go through every single example, but hopefully you get the idea of how the tool works and how you can apply it with your files that you have inside of OpenRoads Designer for a roadway project.